to go to Tumblr reaction or this My Little Pony Dark Sand fanfic reading called An Angel of Grief. It is 30 minutes and 46 seconds long. Another reading by Sparrow. Thank you, Sweetie Belle. And just to let you know, the picture you might see in the story has nothing to do with the fanfiction. It's just like it's the concept of the picture. Okay, let's get this reaction started. In 3, 2, 1, go.
The chill of a cold winter's night has me within its grasp. As I sluggishly paced myself among the willows,
I like the
saw
music.
the branches dangling like sharp, dismal claws waiting to slash me. Yet as I pushed through
the wind
they
effect.
never once touched me. Instead, those limbs remained above my head, swaying to the howling wind. As the snow covered the earth, some of it lingered in the air, illuminated by Luna's full moon. The snowfall tinted my surroundings with a light shade of blue. The vegetation lay dead upon the
Man, it
beaten
sounds
trail,
like a big storm
withering
brewing
away
outside.
With each brown leaf drifting to the ground. Besides the whistling wind and my hooves pressing upon the rocks, snow, and leaves, not another sound was heard. No birds chirped and no critters spoke, making the landscape seem utterly
who'll be out in this weather? Who'll be out in this weather?
Dragging myself
Really?
along the muddy road and over the fallen trees. In the distance, I gazed upon a black iron gate. On each side, a burned-out lantern stood in its own stone pillar, both holding
It
the
sounds
gate's
like the place is
hinges.
haunted.
Vines, thorns, and sprigs with grave flowers possessed the entrance, seeming to claim it within its natural right. The words Amino Cemetery were inscribed on a rustic
It's a
iron
bad idea
arch
if it's
above
cemetery,
the
you
gate's
might be
doors.
ghost in there.
Pushing them aside, causing some of the vegetation to crumble and fall to the ground, I made my way into the graveyard.
Sounds like no one's been in there for
I
a
don't
while.
exactly know what struck me first. Was it the rows of stones rising above the layers of mist and snow? Or how dark and bleak the sight was? Was it always like this? I could think of a time when this place was lively.
Maybe
full
the
of
fact
color
you're
from
there
the
is
roses,
doing
pines,
it.
and bushes
Maybe the fact you're
surrounding
there
the
is
site
causing
in
this.
nature's own tight, warm hug. I remember on any given day, you could, ironically enough, take a relaxing stroll through this place, see the graves, and honor those who have passed. Now, any ounce of joy or happiness.
I don't know why. This reminds me of the remembrance.
Stones.
It must be remembrance or something. I don't know if that's right or something. But it does give me like a remembrance sort of story.
As the way they were before. The tombstones were stained, corroding from the downfall of snow. The once wide gravel paths were now merely
You're gonna find
covered with
the
mud,
you're gonna see like Rainbow Dasher's grave or something.
The vault, once a proud freestanding structure, was now showing its age. From where I stood, I could see cracks within its stone. I lowered and shook my head in dismay. This place was completely abandoned. Something I
This is not Twilight speaking.
Yet, as I trudged through the yard, passing by what's left of those rows of
tombstones, first person view?
My heart sank.
I think.
As my mind came to terms with reality. Nothing seemed to be left here, except for the gravestones and the emptiness. Is this really how we remember things once important to us? Is this how we treat places of remembrance? Like they're worth nothing to us?
Did I just say
I thought for the
remembrance?
longest time, a cemetery wasn't some place you ever left alone.
No.
It's always a place you can come to and feel the company of whoever laid there in rest.
Yeah.
It's the place to feel joy and happiness. A sort of celebration of living life and remembering the times they spent alive. But I guess the idea doesn't really matter here anymore. All the love, the cheer, and glee had escaped through those gates. In return, the creeping cold darkness of despair seeped its way in and filled the gap
But it's
left
what
by happiness.
is on the inside that counts,
It turned
surely.
a once thriving place into a grave of its own self. I laid down with
Okay, I know this is not Twilight. I know this is not Twilight speaking,
as a single
but
tear escaped my eyes. I heard something in
it's
the
the
wind.
sense of
Looking up and around,
grief,
I managed to spot
basically.
a raven perched on a mausoleum. It stared directly at me, cawing before
A
brushing
raven?
away. What does it want? Why
Does
is
that
it speaking to me?
Does that
Is it
sense
trying
bad
to draw
luck
my
or something?
attention? Doesn't it know I have already given
Reminds me
up?
of Tower of London a
I
bit.
sighed. I didn't know, but I felt like this bird caught at me for a reason I've yet to care about. After all,
The bird can
it wants
sense
my attention. So what's stopping
your
me
pain.
from giving it? I stood up, brushing some of the snow off of my back.
And why are you
sure the
there?
bird
Why are you
remained
walking
within
there in the
sight.
snow?
It flew off. Great. Alone once more, I decided to walk among the gravestones as I searched for the raven. To my luck, I found the bird. However, it was perched on a grave I've never quite seen before. Could this be the one I came for? It was carved
This
from
reminds me of
marble,
the gravestone
standing
in
no
Harry
taller
Potter a
than
bit
few
as
meters.
well.
An angel wearing a thin headband and a silk sleeveless robe. While the sight of a heavenly being would appear cheerful to ponies, this did not seem to be celebrating anything. In fact,
Angel?
it was doing merely
Angel's
the
got his
opposite,
own gravestone.
laying itself over a curved, boxed tombstone. This angel appeared to be grieving over whoever was laid to rest there.
And in this picture, if Celestia really died,
I had no clue on
how
to
did she
react to
die?
such a sight. For one, I had to wonder if this was the grave. If this was the final resting
Read
site
it!
of someone close to me.
read the grave. That's how
All
you
these
can
years
find
of
out.
exploring cemeteries throughout Equestria, my efforts had finally paid off. Is it
Yes.
the final resting place of my wife?
Your
With
wife?
a burst of desperation, I leaned up against the tomb and brushed away the snow, trying to uncover any sort of inscription to whom the grave belonged to. At long last,
I
after
think this
clearing
is
out any
speaking.
natural
I think an
obstructions,
OC is
I could
speaking
see
in
some
this.
sort of name engraved
This
in
is
the
basically
stone.
an OC.
While the first of it was scratched up, I could make out the last name to be Grief.
Grief?
Grief.
The name's
It's what
called
I felt
Grief?
after I found it.
Good
It's what I
grief.
felt after my hopes grew, only to be trampled and stomped into the ground.
That sounded so
Grief
English.
was not her
Good
last name,
grief.
nor was it her
No,
first.
Charlie Brown.
But now I guess
Or
it's
Snoopy.
something I'd label her as. She's done this to me, to cause such grief over her death.
Why
I
would she
threw
do
my
that?
head down and covered it with my hooves.
Your
How could I have been
hooves.
so naive? How could I have let this happen in the first place? I was her husband, for crying out loud. Why did I leave her behind before she died? It wasn't my fault, yet I felt like it was. It's my fault she died. It must be.
That's
Right?
what when someone dies, you
I could have
always
said no.
tend to
I
blame
could have tried to
yourself,
persuade her
even
from
though
leaving
it's
me
not your
behind at
your
home.
fault.
But
These
I
things
let her
happen,
go.
and
I let
sometimes
her
you
go,
cannot
and now
stop
she's
it.
lost because of me. At this point, I could believe
But
I'll
you're
never be able
there?
to find her ever again.
Sure, she can sense you
I
by the
then heard
grave.
tapping. I pulled my head up and saw the raven once more, pecking at an olive branch, lying on the petal of the angel's grave.
But that's showing your,
It too was carved
that's
from the
by
same
showing
stone
your
as the divine
respect
being.
to your wife.
It rested below
Isn't that
the
enough?
left hand of the angel, appearing as if she purposely dropped it, while the other cushioned her head. She laid over the gravestone. The raven tapped at the branch once more, and it started to annoy me. In fact, it seemed irritating to hear the raven pecking at the branch, which wasn't real to even
Can the
begin with.
ravens hear
I
your
came here to
wife?
find answers and think to myself, how could I think with this bird tapping its beak on marble? I stared at the bird.
He's graving
irked
out
by my peace of
letters
mind
on
being
the
broken
stone.
by that tap. How stupid is this thing? Why is it pecking at a fake branch? Doesn't it know it's not real? With rage filling my limbs, I knew I had enough of the bird's foolishness.
Give
I reared
the
up,
raven
hoping
a
to scare off
chance.
the raven by stomping on the ground it stood. However, as my front legs came down, the bird flew away, and my hooves crushed the branch underneath. Breaking apart with a few snaps, it crumbled beneath my hooves. The defined olives, stems, and leaves were now smashed to dust by my hateful force. Meanwhile, I could only look down upon my destruction in terrified awe.
What?
As my hooves ached in pain, my mind simply raced with questions.
Don't say you're gonna die in front of
What
the
did I just
grave.
do? Did I just destroy a piece of some pony's grave? Did I just vandalize some pony's resting spot? Did I just destroy something not worth tampering with? As I
Oh
lifted
dear.
my 4 hooves off of
You
the
could have
ground,
set off the you could
I
have set
laid
off
down
the
in the
spirits by
snow
doing
and
that.
held them close to me. They
OC
dropped from
name.
the force it took to break apart the marble branch, making me whimper in agony.
Oh, sure,
Was it
marble you can
necessary for me
actually
to act in
is
such a
everlasting
manner?
compared to
The
stone.
bird did annoy me, but I didn't have to rear up and strike the branch. I could have easily just said, shoot, and it would have flew off. I sighed,
Don't blame the bird.
knowing I did.
You're the one who came into the
Now, because
grave.
of my actions, a piece of a wonderful sculpture was broken beyond repair, covered by a downfall of snow. If I had magic or the ability to work with a chisel, I would try to carefully piece.
Get that
by piece
pony in
restore the
season
olive branch.
7 to help you.
However, I lacked those abilities. Thus, any effort on my behalf
Ow.
would be seemingly worthless. Whoever sculpted each painstaking detail into this gravestone, I applaud your intricate work.
It was
She's
the
a beautiful
Raven.
angel, one mirroring the
Good old
elements of
Raven.
charm of Princess Celestia herself. Such a divine being she is, with beauty and grace complementing her perfect feminine form. One would be proud and happy to have such goddess
That's so
qualities,
Raven.
to which
So
any
I'm
pony
thinking of a
would
TV show called
nothing
Raven.
would be able to drag her
Sorry.
down.
One show.
Yet I see her crying over the gravestone of a lost one. I see a once joyful creature who once celebrated in the light of day, now fallen to her knees, on the brink of sobbing over death. You're an angel. You shouldn't be able to feel the pain of a lost one. You should instead be celebrating the gift of life and beauty.
Why not?
I sighed, the freezing wind brushing over my coat. While the physical pain in my hooves were gone, the agony within me remained. Dipping my head, I felt the weight of distress crush it inward. My body shook in cold misery as tears fell from my eyes.
Oh.
I never knew that angels could feel pain too. How can one know joy and love if they
That
never
angel
suffered it?
is your wife.
How can one know happiness
think.
if they never knew despair? How can one soul live without knowing their emotions? I wiped my tears from my eyes, breathing in the fresh winter air. As I exhaled, the weight on my mind was lifted by a thought. With a sigh of relief, I realized I've wasted too much time ignoring the truth. Until now, I never accepted the fact and the pain that it came with. The fact is, I'll
What?
never be able to find her ever again. I'll
She's
never be able to hold her close to me again.
she's
I'll never be able
within
to kiss her,
you.
talk to her,
Are you part
or
of
take
her?
slow walks with her ever again. I'll never be able to tell her how much I loved, cherished, and adored her. She was my angel.
And she still is.
I rose to my hooves, while the thought of her was still hard to bear. If I knew my wife well, she'd be saying, "Don't cry, because I'm not gone. I'm just not with you right now. So don't you fret. I know I'll be seeing you soon. So enjoy your life until then." I nodded my head with a half-hearted grin, the cold tears still wet on my face. She wasn't with me right now, but I knew I'd be with her again sometime in the future.
Yes, when you
So
die.
why was I crying? Well, maybe it's because I still miss her, but that will never change. As I stood, I gazed beyond the cemetery.
She
and
misses
saw the
you
sun break
as
the
well.
horizon. It was morning. The once bleak gravestones shone like pearls in the sunlight. A new gust of warm wind swept through the cemetery, already melting some of the snow off my coat. To my humble surprise, I also saw the raven from before, posting on a bust. It cawed out to Equestria, as if to announce my revelation. I could only bow my head and smile. Never.
An interesting story there. The Angel of Grief. The angel was your wife. I believe that's how it goes. The angel is your wife. And, well, in a sense, this pony, OC, not Twilight, is basically, okay, he's grieving. He believes it is his fault. and this is true for so many people when their loved ones dies. It's one of the stages of grief. You want to blame yourself. First you blame someone else, and next minute then you say, this is my fault, I caused this, and she's gonna hate me for dying or something. Another thing, and what I believe it in the case, she's a part of you in a way. Okay, she might not visit visit you, but keep the memories in you. If you remember her in your pony's eyes, you will never forget her, and she will never forget. She has not forgotten about you. She has not forgotten about you at all. Yeah, she's dead. Yeah, she's dead. We know she's dead. But she has not forgotten about you. She's waiting until the time is right to see you again. Well, also, death is a pretty. Some people say it's a pretty taboo subject. It's hard to talk about grief. It's hard to talk about it. And sometimes you have to you've got to talk about it. And if you don't talk about all your anger and all your frustration will be stuck within yourself. And you're going to feel more and more depressed. And what you've done by going to the grave is basically you let out your feelings. And you never know when you go to the gravestone, someone's actually overhearing you. And that's why some people say gravestones or graveyard is practically haunted because of all the souls within the body, with all the souls in the body, all the souls within the gravestones, and there might be some good energy and bad energy in the graveyards. But I've been watching Most Haunted for a long time. Each spiritual level will be on a different level. Okay, that means someone who died in the 1800s will only probably reenact or manifest themselves within that period. But someone who died in probably 1920 won't see that because there's different spiritual levels when it comes to ghost. In a sense, if you believe that sort of thing, I'm not saying you have to believe it, but there are different levels of ghost sightings, and if you've got a connection with that particular person, you might see that person's ghost, or you wouldn't see it with someone else's ghost because you're not connected to that time stream. But sometimes you do see you go to a site, you think you see a ghost, and it could be. It is pretty hard to explain. Not everyone believes in ghosts, and it's down to their beliefs really. Well, hope you like this all my reactions I do, and I will see you next time. Oh yes.
Oh, wow.
Rarity, I came as soon as I heard.
What happened?
What happened?
Oh, yeah, the heist. What happened? I sound so concerned even though I just saw what happened.
Oh, Twilight!
Oh, no.
It's awful, horrible, dreadful.
The worst possible thing?
The
Worst possible thing! Oh, I love it.
Uh-huh. And that would be...
Do you not know what happened? You just said you heard.
Why, Twilight? Do I detect skepticism?